the most defining moment for me was, number one, I knew I wanted to be in this particular role, in this seat. And I had a mentor of mine, and I knew that I wanted to move more into the development fundraising aspect. And I said to him, there was an open role, and I said, I really want to switch gears and move into development and do more fundraising, because it's important for my own growth and where I want to go. And he looked at me and he said, I don't see you as a fundraiser. And I said, well, that to me was probably one of the most defining moments of my career, because I took that very personally. I know what I'm capable of doing. And, I was listening to watched the Michael Jordan, documentary where, that chip on your shoulder, it's like, don't tell me what I can't do. Right?
Hey, good morning, everyone. John Fenton here, the CEO Sensei. And I am really, really excited today because my guest today is Sean Kramer. And Sean is the CEO of the Diabetes Research Institute Foundation in South Florida. And what really makes this special is, number one, diabetes is such an important health issue facing our country in these days, and the great work that they're doing there. But also, it helps to promote and support the foundation. Helps to promote and support University of Miami Health, the School of Medicine, and the health system. And so I'm really just so honored to have Sean Kramer. And why that's special to me is I graduated from the University of Miami. So Sean, welcome.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
It's really great to have you today. And as I was thinking about our time together today in this interview, in this short conversation, I was recalling, like I have some friends. I have a friend. I mean, I was a real life story. I have a friend who has diabetes, and he actually have some partial amputation done on his foot. And I remember back in high school, one of our coaches had diabetes, and he had some issues. But I don't remember diabetes being that pervasive in our society. I guess you didn't know that many people who had diabetes back then. And it seems to be more and more pervasive these days. And so the work that your foundation is doing and the University of Miami Medical School are doing is really, really important.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that. And, I am a type 1 diabetic myself. I'm also a 4th generation diabetic in my family, going back from my mother, my grandfather, my great grandmother. So this is personal to me. And you're right in terms of the kind of the silent pandemic that is diabetes, right? And there's between type 1 and type 2, and obviously there's significantly more on the type 2 side. But our focus at the foundation and at the Institute is really finding a cure for type 1 and making sure that we can solve this problem for the 1 million+ people that are living with type 1. And ultimately what we believe is whatever cure we find for type 1 will impact and influence whatever research happens on the type 2 cure space, which, at this point, there are over 34+ million people living with diabetes. So it is pervasive, and we see that only getting worse as time goes along.
Mm. For the people watching and listening, can you explain the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes?
Sure. So type 1 is an autoimmune disease where the body, in essence, attacks the cells within the pancreas that produce the insulin. And, much like other autoimmune diseases that you hear about, whether it's MS or even psoriasis to celiac disease. So, any number of different diseases are autoimmune. So it's not something that you can necessarily, prevent from happening. Versus type 2, where we believe that there is a direct link between some of the comorbidity factors, whether it's, obesity and lifestyle and whatnot, that you can influence. But type 2s can, turn into type 1s, where the pancreas just simply, shuts down. So, that's the primary difference, is the autoimmune versus non-autoimmune.
And tell me, what does your foundation do, and how do you interact with the University of Miami and School of So
the foundation was set up now several decades ago to fund the research that happens at the Diabetes Research Institute, which is part of the University of Miami health system. And we are the primary funders of the work that happens within the institute itself. So if folks are looking for a place to fund cure-related research, we are really the best place for a cure, because that's all we do. We're not focused on the care. We're not necessarily focused on the education. There are other organizations that are out there that do excellent jobs of promoting both education and the care aspect, and they're critical partners for us. Our firm belief is that whenever the cure does come, we need people to be leading healthy lives with their disease, so that they're able to receive whatever that the cure is going to be. Whether that is ends up being some kind of vaccine or some kind of pill or some kind of transplant, but need to be a controlled diabetic in order to receive that. That is our belief. So we have great partners, but our focus really is exclusively on cure-related research, and that's it.
So do you or does the Institute have an idea about, where are we in the spectrum of finding a cure?
Well, we have actually found what we believe is what I consider to be a functional cure. And when I say cure, we're looking at a biological cure, right? Because there are many type 1s that are living with mechanical cures. So they have pumps, which are great, right? Because they're obviously not having to dose themselves, and it's done mechanically. But we believe in a biological cure. So what we have focused on has been around what we consider to be islet cell transplantation. So taking cells from a pancreas and then transplanting them into a person with diabetes. And we have found that works. This is a procedure that we've done here for now several decades, and is equally done across the globe in larger scale than it is done here in the United States. And people that have undergone islet cell transplantations have, removed the need or the necessity for receiving insulin. So they went from being diabetic to no longer being diabetic. The challenge that we have with that, however, is the fact that now they are needing to take anti-rejection medication, which presents a whole new series of issues. And you think about that in light of what we've just gone through with the pandemic, right? Where, do you really want to be immune compromised in the middle of a pandemic? So our focus now is, can we figure out a way of removing the anti-rejection aspect of the transplantation, so that people can lead normal, healthy lives and not deal with some of the consequences and ramifications of having to be on any kind of anti-rejection drugs. So we're in the process of looking at that with clinical trials. We're equally, thinking through and thinking around prevention of type 1, right? So preventing people from getting it at all. We are also now looking at, can the pancreas itself regenerate itself even after having been attacked by the immune system? And then how do you block the immune system from then re-engaging or re-attacking the pancreas? So, in our line of work, I will never tell anybody that we're on a XYZ timeline for, when a cure is coming, because science moves at the pace that science needs to move. And when the cure comes, we will all cheer, no matter where that comes from. The great thing about the Institute is that for us, our work is really open access. So anybody that wants access to the information or the research that we're working on, we're happy to share that. That is a unique space in the academic medical world. For us, it doesn't matter where the cure comes, as long as it comes, and that is paramount for the work that we do and for all of the researchers, and so it's great. And I will share that like myself, living with type 1, we have several of our researchers are directly impacted by the disease itself. Chris Fraker, who's one of our researchers, is living with type 1. Norma Kenyon has a daughter with type 1. So, we're working as fast and as diligently as we can, but equally, understanding that science moves at its own pace.
You mentioned international efforts. Is there open access internationally as well about the cure? And what are some other countries doing about a cure for diabetes in their countries?
So we're part of a global federation at the foundation, and we have partnerships and relationships with diabetes research centers really across the world. From Italy to Sweden to China. You name it. There are researchers that are around the world looking for the cure, and we've positioned ourselves really to try and be at the hub of really all of that research, so that we can speak to other institutes, other researchers, have dialogue with them, and make sure that they understand what we're working on, we understand what they're working on, and really trying to push the science forward.
Great, it's great. And some other friends of ours, they have children and grandchildren, as you mentioned, generational, that have diabetes type 1. Is there early detection? Like, when is diabetes first recognized in children? So, people with young kids out there, if they're watching or listening, what should they be looking out for?
Yeah, usually it's symptoms that you find, right? And unless you yourself are a type 1 and you're doing the antibody test to see if your children are potentially more likely to develop type 1, really it's symptomatic. So you're looking for the symptoms of diabetes in a child, and you may not recognize it at first, right? So increased thirst, lethargy, increased urination, those types of things, vision problems. Those are the types of things that you see in when a type 1 typically gets diagnosed. Those are not all the symptoms, but those are typically the most common that you'll see. I was listening to a mom speak to us the other day, and she was telling us, her 4-year-old was so thirsty that they just decided, she got so tired of going up and down stairs to bring her water at night, that she installed a water cooler in her child's room. And figured, well, this just now saved me from having to go up and down the stairs, without recognizing that really no child needs to have a water cooler installed in their room. That's probably kind of a big red flag. So I would encourage people, if you're finding that your child is drinking a lot and very, very thirsty constantly, and has the lethargy and is urinating a lot, that they be looked at for potential diabetes symptoms. So.
And they do that through blood testing, or how do they identify?
Yes, it's a blood test, correct.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit more about you. So I know you've been a CEO now, the Chief Executive Officer of the Diabetes Research Institute Foundation for less than 2 years now. So tell me, that's a new role for you. Tell me, what are some of your biggest challenges? Obviously you've been kind of tracking along with the pandemic, I guess, right? So please share for us some of the challenges you faced in your first 1.5 or 2 years of being a CEO.
Sure. Yeah. What a time to come into a brand new role with a brand new organization. I joined in January of 2020, and 2.5 months later, we were fully shut down from doing what we do on the foundation side, which was obviously going out, meeting with donors, raising money, having events, all the things that foundations do, and had to really rethink the way that we operated. And in many ways, I say that the pandemic, for me, coming into this role, was a bit of a blessing, because when you're coming into an organization, and this particular organization really, it needed quite a bit of help from the perspective of, a lot of the processes, procedures they were doing, some of the the campaigns and the thoughts around development were dated, and so when you had an opportunity to just kind of take a time out, right, and just say, okay, let's look at what we're able to do now, instead of just running from one event or one meeting to the next. We had a chance to step back and say, okay, let's take a look at really what's happening organizationally, and what do we need to get to where we want to be, And we have one goal, right? I have it's not very complicated. I have to raise enough money for the researchers to do what they need to do so that they can finish the job, and then we can shut the lights off. So when we think about that, or when we thought about that, really what we did was we did a deep dive within each of the various departments to say, how do we go from point A to point Z, and what are the steps that we're going to need to be able to do to get there? And if we were going to rebuild this organization from scratch, let's look at that, right? And the pandemic, with the ability to just take a breather and a pause on everything that was taking place, allowed us to do that. And I think it was beneficial, challenging. There's no doubt about that. It was very, very challenging, but we were able to do that and make the changes that were needed organizationally.
Why? So I have a follow-up question to that. So why do you think you were equipped to take that perspective and take that view when others had not?
So first off, I have been in the nonprofit space for 98% of my career and had seen, what both worked and what does not work, and knowing what changes really needed to take place within this particular organization to take us to that next level. When I arrived, a good example is, I asked the question of the marketing team, and I said, have we done market research to understand where we fit within the overall, schema of the space? And that had never been done. Nobody, internally had ever did kind of an environmental, landscape review to understand, where we were. And what we would hear from the team is, everybody knows us, right? We're a very well-known organization. Anybody that's diagnosed is going to immediately know about the DRI and the DRIF and the work that we do. And I made the point that I myself am a patient at the Diabetes Research Institute, and I hadn't heard of it until I Googled it. So I said, if that's me in my own backyard, my sense is that that's probably, the thought process is probably a little skewed. And so we launched a market research effort. And the very first focus group that we did, which was during the pandemic, it was in April of 20. And I remember being on the call, and the team, we were all in the background on Zoom, and they asked, how many of you have heard of the Diabetes Research? These are all people living with or had children with type 1. And nobody had heard of us. And it was an eye-opening experience for the team to understand maybe what we had been doing wasn't exactly where we needed to be. And maybe, ideas that Sean has and that the leadership team has are going to really start to impact and address those issues. So that was kind of the first step in that process. But I think that having been in other organizations and understanding exactly where we should be and how we should be doing things, and allowing the team to understand what my perspective was and what the leadership team perspective was, I think is really what helped us kind of move the needle along.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. So what do you think, how would you characterize your leadership style?
I have my role is to be the chief obstacle remover. I hire for really great people who have really great skill sets and just get out of their way. I'm here to make sure that they have the tools and resources that they need to do their job effectively. And equally, that being said, I also believe in not just saying, but doing. And so I remember, one of the first events that I came to in Palm Beach, we were doing a luncheon, and I arrived, a couple hours early, and I said, what can I do? They said, we need to put, programs on the chairs. And so I grabbed a stack and I'm putting programs on the chairs. And I remember looking back and the entire team was standing there with their mouth open. They said they've never had a CEO that actually got in there and did the work. And, so for me, I'm not above anybody's role or position. I'm part of the team, and I'm here to provide guidance and motivation. And I know we've talked about football in the past, and I'm the coach. I'm going to give you the playbook. You got a role to play. You get on the field and do your job to the best of your ability, and work collaboratively with your team members, and get to the end zone. That's it.
Yes, we did talk about that, didn't we? And I know you like the analogies, the football analogies. And, I like to say I played my best football in the red zone. Get to the end zone, right?
Right.
Get to the end zone. Well, that's really great. So I think from an organizational standpoint, what you really are trying to do, and I think you mentioned this to me before, is basically success would be putting your organization on business, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Totally funding, finding the cure and be done. That's such important work. And I really want to acknowledge you for leading that charge and being part of that team and leading your folks. One more question for you, on a personal note. Tell me about, I'm a big follower. I've had my own experiences, and all the CEOs and leaders that I speak to, typically there's something that's happened in their past that's kind of led them on the path to where they've gotten in their careers. And I typically call them, a defining moment, or some critical moment in your life where, you came through a situation and you came out the other side, and it really propelled you forward in your success in your life, not just in your career, but in life in general. So can you share with us, is there a defining moment that you can call upon?
I had, early on in my career, I identified and recognized that I wanted to have an impact and truly make a difference in the world, and certainly be able to make sure that if I'm going to be on this planet, that it made a difference somewhere, some way, shape, or form. And I remember early on working at a university. I was working at Florida International University, and seeing some of the changes that I knew needed to be made, and thinking, wow, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to do that from the role that I'm in. And so I remember, being 22, 23 and saying, the only way that this is going to really be impactful is if I move into the CEO role, because I watched what our senior leadership team was doing, and thinking I need to be at the decision-making table to be able to do that. And so recognizing that, I really mirrored my career off of what I looked at other CEOs having from an experience perspective, and made sure that every step that I took along the CEO path or my career path, when I actually sat at the table to have a dialogue for this particular role, I knew I was going to be the best qualified person sitting there. And I think the most defining moment for me was, number one, I knew I wanted to be in this particular role, in this seat. And I had a mentor of mine, and I knew that I wanted to move more into the development fundraising aspect. And I said to him, there was an open role, and I said, I really want to switch gears and move into development and do more fundraising, because it's important for my own growth and where I want to go. And he looked at me and he said, I don't see you as a fundraiser. And I said, well, that to me was probably one of the most defining moments of my career, because I took that very personally. I know what I'm capable of doing. And, I was listening to watched the Michael Jordan, documentary, where, that chip on your shoulder, it's like, don't tell me what I can't do. Right? And so now every time I go out there and I close, a large gift, I think about that, and I'll say, I say to myself, like, people didn't believe in me, and you know what? I'm going to go out and be not just a good fundraiser, but a great fundraiser. And so that really kind of propelled and pushed me to where I where I am today and in my own thinking. So
That's really amazing. So just to kind of wrap up for today, and again, Sean Kramer, the CEO, Chief Executive Officer of Diabetes Research Institute Foundation. They're based in South Florida, but really have a national scale, national scope in finding a cure for diabetes. So Sean, what's the best way that people watching and listening can reach out to you or to learn more about the organization?
sure. Check out our webpage, obviously, diabetesresearch.org. Interested in learning even more about us, I would tell you to sign up to become a DRI insider. We send out lots and lots of information about the research and the science. I'm always accessible and available. Find me on LinkedIn. You can find my profile on there. Happy to connect, happy to talk and discuss, and always looking for ideas, and happy to share and strategize and brainstorm with anybody that wants to reach out.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much. And so again, everybody, my special guest today, Sean Kramer, the Chief Executive Officer of the Diabetes Research Institute Foundation. He's also a Chief Obstacle Remover at his organization. And it's a great organization. They're doing great work to help find a cure and put themselves out of business when they do. So Sean, thank you so much for being my guest today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.